More people have woken up. A recent Gallup poll found
After
most Americans think the government's doing too big government. I stumbled across this Libertarian magazine, Reason. Its motto, free minds and free markets. And this is what has taught me the most about the benefits of liberty. Its most recent editors are Nick Gillespie and Matt Welch. So, is this America's libertarian moment?
Well, you know, John, I think actually we should start talking about the libertarian era, because it is upon us. What has opened people's ideas or minds up to libertarian ideas is the 21st century so far has been a demonstration project of how Republicans and conservatives can screw things up under the Bush years, and now we have the Obama version and the liberal Democrat version of screwing everything up. So people understand that trying to control more and more parts of people's lives doesn't work. They're looking for an alternative, and that's what libertarianism offers, the idea of free minds and free markets, that you can control more parts of your life.
But libertarian era, I want to believe you, but I just don't see that many people getting it.
Well, that's a shorthand for libertarianism can be you're fiscally conservative and you're socially tolerant, right? Poll after poll will show you that Americans are much more fiscally conservative than their elected representatives. A majority of Americans thinks that we should balance the budget. Big majorities and growing majorities, especially of young people, are more socially tolerant. They think that we should legalize marijuana, which no politician wants to talk about. They're in favor of gay marriage.
Well, more are now coming around.
They will come around last. You know, the people lead the way in this case. And so when you have the populace who is actually much more libertarian than the government, you will begin to see some of these expressions in the political marketplace and elsewhere.
Still, all kinds of skepticism. Libertarians are just considered odd and weird by including my colleagues.
That's a nice story, right, Stossel, even for a libertarian like you? Here's how desperately wrong you are. That's what's happening, man. And you don't care. Stossel doesn't care.
What's the hostility?
Part of it is that we have a major two-party system in this country, and people tend to, especially in political media and elsewhere, congregate around the Republican tribe and the Democratic tribe. What they are failing to recognize, and they see everything through that. So if you are against their team that's in power using libertarian arguments, you are by definition a freak, right? You're on the other side. But what they don't understand is that the world is changing around them, and people are more used to picking off issues one by one instead of accepting everything that a big party cramps.
But let me just defend Bill O'Reilly for a moment, because uncharacteristically, because I don't think he has a tribe. He genuinely believes that to legalize drugs or sex work or gambling is harmful.
But you know,
many Americans do.
One of the things that is interesting is when he said you're living in theories or you're dreaming up ideas. We invaded Iraq based on a theory that turned out to be wrong, and then the idea behind that theory was we can go in there and create democracy, you know, just whip it up like a souffle. It didn't work. We're now suffering under Obamacare and other types of financial regulations that are based on theory that have nothing to do in fact. And then when you go to the libertarian side of things, when you talk about places like Google or Apple or Whole Foods markets, where these are not theories, these are not abstract concepts, these are the incarnation of the idea that people with freedom to think and to do stuff produce really interesting results. And that's the reality.
And pursuant to the idea about the drug war or people doing things for themselves and hurting themselves, the reality on the ground by almost everybody who's looked at it very closely is that the drug war, as stated, what it was trying to do has failed.
I think Americans confuse libertarian and libertine.
Sometimes, and you know, that can be a problem because you know, the fact is if you believe in social tolerance, you're going to have to put up with a lot of lifestyles that you yourself might not choose. You get more peace by allowing people to go about their business as long as they're not forcing it on other people. And if that means sometimes you have to look away, well, do it. That's not so bad.
There's a stereotype that paints libertarians as obsessed with marijuana and drug legalization. That led Ann Coulter to say this.
You want to suck up to your little liberal friends and say, oh, but we want to legalize pot. This is why people think libertarians are...
We bleeped a word that means wimps, basically.
Yeah, well, I do want to say she is right. We are bleeps.
But in her war, which is the war against liberals and Democrats, we're not useful for her at all moments, and so therefore we seem to be weak-kneed and not part of it. What she doesn't understand is that we are freely choosing to do this, not because we're trying to suck up to anybody, but because we think it's a genuinely bad idea when the government gets in between you and your decisions, which is a conservative notion, fundamentally. The limited government notion that Ann Coulter otherwise supports in most cases is one that says the government can't solve your problems for you. It's not going to change your morality for the better. She knows that, but because she's a tribalist and because she's fundamentally intolerant, she can't brook someone else having a different approach. I welcome Ann Coulter's libertarianism when it's applied. I'm not part of her tribe, and I'm not ever going to be.
Well, she does brook it. She came on the show and talked.
But, you know, it's also, you know, it is true that I think libertarians care a lot about drug legalization, because that's a very clear case of the government saying you cannot do this. You can't change your mind by ingesting this rather than that. You know, booze is okay, pot is not okay. That's a clear libertarian issue. But the fact of the matter is libertarians have been the people who have been sounding the alarm about government spending, the size, scope, and spending of government, and the uselessness of most government interventions into everyday life. It's not just about pot.
Some say there can never be a successful libertarian party because libertarians are too independent. People claim organizing libertarians into a political party is like
herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
That was a great Super Bowl commercial for an internet firm. They have a point, and the Libertarian Party has never done much of anything.
Well, you know, that's true, and the fact is that America, in its history, sometimes it has more than two parties, but basically there's always going to be two major parties because that's the way the electoral system shakes out. What can change, and what is changing, is that libertarian ideas, whether it's in the Libertarian Party or the Republican Party or even the Democratic Party, influence a lot of things, and I think we're starting to see that now. The Tea Party, to the extent that it's been successful, it's been hammering on the very libertarian theme that the government is spending too much. And that has really changed American politics, and it will continue to, because the simple math shows us that the government cannot go on spending the way that it's spending. Libertarianism has a kind of innate appeal because it trusts people to get on with their lives. You're going to make mistakes, and you'll have people help you out.
I disagree. I think government has an innate appeal. There's a problem. We need a law to solve it.
No, I mean, you know, there's definitely that reaction. But what it is that, you know, libertarianism says, hey, give it a try out your life, and, you know, and see where you end up.
Many people seem to believe libertarians want chaos. Here's a clip from Fox Business Network. The speaker's a leader of a Tea Party group.
You need to understand, there is a consequence to saying you're a libertarian, and if we put in total libertarian actions, there would be almost anarchy, mob rule.
It's a widespread belief.
There is anarchism within libertarianism. I mean, Nick and I have had conversations with people who are always beating us up because we're not anarchistic enough. There's, you know, developed theories about that if you remove government out of a lot of life, human flourishing will proceed. It's an interesting philosophical theory. I don't think necessarily that is the majority of libertarians. What we're trying to do is influence and kind of take the ship that has been lumbering along in this direction. First of all, say stop, and then can we just sort of move it this way and get it so that it's not taking so much of our life and so much of our money?
At least a lot of the Tea Party people and some Republicans seem to be coming around. I was happy to hear this famous politician say this.
I'm listening to those independents, to those libertarians who are saying, you know, it is both sides of the aisle, the leadership, the good old boys in the party.
5 years ago, nobody would have been talking about libertarians.
No, and I think it's great, and I think it's a sign, you know, that the libertarian moment, that the libertarian era is upon us. And I think, you know, we welcome people who talk about being libertarians because that means they're starting to engage a new set of ideas.
And there's something intellectually attractive about being somewhat consistent, right? You know, Democrats and Republicans will completely switch views depending on whether they are in power. Suddenly the Democrats love the NSA. Suddenly Republicans hate government spending. And you know that's going to flip when they go back into power. Libertarians have a pretty consistent argument. They didn't love George W. Bush and they don't love Barack Obama.
I could be wrong, but there do seem to be more libertarians today, more people who care about the Constitution and about limits on government power. Why has this happened? Because of me, of course. I've ranted about this on TV for 20 years, and finally it's paid off. I've convinced more people. And there are more Republicans who lean libertarian because of me. Or maybe not. In the 2008 Republican primary, there was this one obscure Republican presidential candidate who, during a debate, was asked this.
Are you suggesting we invited the 9/11 attacks, sir?
I'm suggesting that we listen to the people who attacked us and the reason they did it. And they are delighted that we're over there because Osama bin Laden has said, I am glad you're over on our sand because we can target you so much easier. They have already now, since that time, have killed 3,400 of our men, and I don't think it was necessary.
Wendell, may I make a comment on that? That's really an extraordinary statement. That's an extraordinary statement of someone who lived through the attack of September 11, that we invited the attack because we were attacking Iraq. I don't think I've ever heard that before, and I've heard some pretty absurd explanations for September 11.
Rudy Giuliani got the applause. But by 2012, it was Giuliani who was out of elective politics and Ron Paul getting massive crowds at rallies. So, Congressman Paul, welcome, and I think you get the credit for bringing in more, especially young people.
A little bit.
But these are huge. You got 2,000 people showing up at rallies?
To the surprise of many, including myself, our largest rally was at Berkeley campuses. We had 8,000 people came on.
8,000
yes.
people.
So that is pleasing, but it is the message because people criticize me all the time. You know, Ron Paul, you're not a very good speaker, you know, that sort of thing. But the message is great. But I think what has happened is the absolute failure of our system is coming together. The failure of our foreign policy, the failure of our monetary system, the failure of our economic policies, and too much intrusion into our privacy. And people see, if they just hear the message of liberty, and they say, wow, that makes sense. And it's very attractive to the young people. It's very energizing for me.
And when you started trying to explain these ideas to people, you were a lonely congressman. You would vote no on bills. Sometimes you'd be the only no vote, and your colleagues just thought you were this weird annoyance, a pesky bug. What's he talking about?
There was a lot of that, and I never expected much to happen. So these last 5 years have been a bit of a surprise to me.
You got used to getting no respect.
But I thought that in time, maybe in 20 or 30 years, somebody might read, well, you know, maybe let's check his voting record.
We're always optimistic. When I was doing this at CBS and then ABC, and people would sneer at me, I got depressed about it.
I never did. People ask me if I, you know, got very frustrated, you know, because it didn't seem like I was getting anywhere in Washington. I said I never got frustrated because I had low expectations. I just didn't think I was going to change the world and change Washington. I wanted to change a few people's minds, as you have done on television for so long. But change people's minds is what's important.
If, as Jefferson said, the natural progress of things is for government to grow and liberty to yield, what good is it to change a few minds? Because government keeps growing. We keep losing that freedom. We have to change the majority of minds.
And then Jefferson had some advice about it. There has to be a revolution. He actually literally leaned toward a violent revolution, which I do not. There has to be a revolution. It has to be intellectual. It has to be nonviolent. It has to be energized. The young people have to be involved. And I think we're there. I think we're in the middle of it. And I think that what has happened...
Why do you think we're in the middle of it? We've got more people.
Well, because right now it's actually affecting Washington. I mean, just think of this recent vote that didn't happen on Syria. And it was Republicans and Democrats, grassroots, going to their members and saying, no more war. At the same time, the leadership in the House and the Senate, Republican and Democrat, they were all for it. And they're all for the Fed. So the grassroots got together. You know, I don't like this idea, well, we have to compromise, you know, and raise taxes and do this and that. With the leadership, what we want is a coalition of people who call themselves libertarian conservatives with the progressive Democrats who are principled and they don't place the party at the top level.
I'm surprised that a first-term senator, your son Rand, is already getting traction and more attention, and people talk about him as a presidential candidate.
Yeah, I think it's very encouraging because, you know, I was pretty skeptical when he first announced for the Senate. You know, holy man, you know, is he
skeptical?
Going to He's skeptical. I didn't know whether he could, you know, make it, but it turned out much better.
He's gotten more attention. His popularity has grown.
Yeah, I think this is a sign of what's happening. There's quite a few now. The one that I helped get elected not too long ago, just the last term, was Justin Amash. You know, he's leading the charge in the House and led that bill to try to rein in NSA. So there's other senators helping Rand right now. So I think we should be able to see some very positive things happening right now.